Joining us now from Austin, Texas is Sahar Aziz. She's an associate professor at Texas A&M School of Law. She's also the author of Bringing Down an Uprising, Egypt's Stillborn Revolution. Welcome to the program. Now, the protests are smaller than before, but still people are coming out on the streets despite the government's attempts to stop them.
Yes, I think these protests signify that without a political solution, Egypt will continue to be plagued by violence, unfortunately. What happened on July 3rd, 2013, when the first democratically elected President Mohamed Morsi was deposed, was a political crisis. And unfortunately, the government since then, whether under Adli Mansour or under now Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, they have misguidedly used violence, state repression, and oppression of protests as a way to hope that this problem will go away. But the only way to decrease violence in Egypt is to have a political solution that is inclusive and pluralistic.
Do you think the authorities have any ideas beyond the use or threats of force to try and bring calm to the country?
Unfortunately not, because it's clear that the way in which the government is operating is the same way that Mubarak operated, Sadat operated, and Abdel Nasser operated, which tends to happen when you have a military-run government. The only language they know is the language of the gun and the language of force. And that, in 2014, is no longer a feasible option for the Middle East and the Arab world. The youth have rejected these forms of police brutality and state oppression, and they now want a more democratic system where their voices are heard and that they're part of the decision-making process, as opposed to being used as objects or infantilized, that they should just sit, be quiet, and listen to what the elders tell them.
You mentioned Egypt's youth. Some protesters say this is the beginning of a so-called Muslim youth intifada. What does it look like to you?
Well, 90% of Egypt is Muslim. So when you say Muslim youth for Egypt, you are not talking about some extremist group. This is essentially all the youth, 90% of the youth in Egypt. And the reason why January 25th occurred, which was a revolutionary moment that could have been a revolution or produced revolutionary outcome, but the reason why these now uprisings occurred was because the youth's futures had been robbed. They had been stolen by corrupt business elite and corrupt military and security elite. And every time they had tried to tell the government that they had no jobs, they were starving, they couldn't get married, they couldn't live a life of dignity, they were put in prisons, they were tortured, and they were subjected to police brutality. And the same conditions exist now. And so the people who have the most to lose from this current police state that is expanding in Egypt are the youth. And when you have nothing to lose, or the most to lose and nothing to lose at the same time, then you're forced into violence. And so I think the Sisi regime needs to take very seriously this robbed future that the youth have experienced, and it needs to figure out a way to give them something to live for so that violence is not the only means they have to survive.
Sahar Aziz, thank you very much for joining us here on Al Jazeera.